Unfortunately, we are handling just a very interesting case, a very unfortunate as well, and very sad, which is an elderly lady who was in hospital, and for some reason, the neighbor organized making a will. And obviously, if you read the will, you could see it's not right. It's not very good. She did admit that she had children, which is not true.
Sorry, so they would be her normal beneficiaries, her children, and
correct.
They weren't included in the will.
In the will, in general terms, you will always mention where you were born, who are your parents, who was your husband or wife, or if you were divorced 2-3 times, etc. And so you will say a history. In that particular will, there was not said about children. So they said, no, she had no children, which is a lie.
It actually said she didn't have children.
She didn't have children. So you could see that's obviously is false. Let's call it this way. It's false. So they did organize. That was after Christmas. They did organize the will. I'm still on the criminal side, starting the claim against the beneficiary now.
So somebody actually benefited who weren't those that were meant to benefit from the will.
Correct. She did have a will, which basically she only had a son, and the son was in contact with her. So there was not any family issues saying, no, I'm not going to leave anything to my children. No, right. It was not a case. But for some reason, she was very old, vulnerable. She went to hospital. For some reason, these guys were helping. Well, this guy was helping her during the last month during the grocery.
So putting her affairs in order as well, obviously.
I don't know how far they went. Well, you can see now.
Yeah.
Going to their property, helping, assisting. And for some reason, the beneficiary did organize the will being signed at the hospital. And obviously the son didn't know because, he said, well, Mum will say one day one thing and then the other will say something different.
That's difficult towards the end, yes.
So basically what happened, they did organize a will. In the will, it was said she didn't have any children, which obviously is false. There is a picture from neighbors with her breathing, with a mask and everything. So she was not in a good condition. I don't know the day the notary went there, how capable she was to make a will. The translator was organized as well by somebody else. And obviously, the will said she leaves everything to the young neighbor. Now, when our client was informed that the mother passed away. I don't know whether exactly he found out that or just a few days after. He flew over from Australia, and unfortunately he didn't make it on time. And the problem was that he did the beneficiary organized a will, and he was the only beneficiary to get it. So
must have come as a bit of surprise to the son who'd flown from Australia.
Correct. Unfortunately, our client's been going around in circles, unfortunately, because he went to one office and then another. And
you have to think as well how the notary managed to
go there
to do this.
That will be the cross-examination.
Surely they're bound not to make sure that people are sound mind and body. Surely that's the legal phrase, is it not, when somebody's meant to sign a will?
Well, the good question here, Carl, is how was she capable to sign at the time? So there is a lot of... in this criminal case, there is no guarantee at all on any further results because you don't know what you're going to end up with. Obviously, we'll have to apply and get the last will, whether her signature, how was her signature, whether she was capable, according to doctors, to make that decision.
Kind of helps if you can check the date and you know when she was in hospital, obviously. So there should be medical records. Can they be accessed?
Yes, it will be. Yeah, that's part of the criminal investigation that we will achieve. The unfortunate thing, Carl, is that you don't know how far you're going to go, how much evidence you're going to get. The good part of it is that neighbors are supporting this theory with our client, who's his son. He was the beneficiary in the previous will. If you compare the previous will,
I see. So there was an original will as well. Mm-hmm.
She made a previous will, and it was perfect, very well written, and very, if you see now the new version of the will, you could say something is being a rush.
It doesn't look to you like it had been put together by a registered lawyer, perhaps. No. That's
a good question. That's part of my investigation. Who wrote it?
It looks a little bit strange. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you could say is wrong is that on previous will, she always says she had children.
Right.
Always. Now, in this one, she didn't say that. She said she never had any children. And she only said she's got one marriage, not some before she had. So you could say the capacity... Anomalies. Now, that anomalies plus doctor's report saying that she was where she was, and she was in a floor where you could say is not people that are very well.
Okay.
You know, like the neurologists and that floor in hospital. So the challenge here, Carl, is, I mean, obviously our client lost everything because when he came here, he couldn't access the property. He couldn't do anything because they will call the police. So you could imagine, and unfortunately, we didn't handle the case from very first day.
Right.
Because I would have approached in a different way, you know. Unfortunately, he's wasted bumping into firms 2 years, got nowhere.
How can somebody not help him in that scenario? You would have thought it would have been relatively straightforward, no?
Well, my opinion here is if you go to the wrong people, when somebody... You need to go to professionals when this is such a difficult thing or grave thing. You cannot go just in the corner. You cannot go where...
You can't cut corners. You have to go... Yeah.
You cannot go where there could be a conflict of interest.
Right.
You cannot go to the lawyers of the beneficiary. You cannot go to the lawyer's friends of a beneficiary. You really need to go to somebody away.
Independent.
And they know what they're doing. They know what they could do straight away, or they could start a criminal action straight away and blocking the property being sold.
Yeah, that's what should have happened
straight away.
Yeah.
Now, what is the issue now? Well, obviously, you've left out in a position which is very, very weak and very unfortunate because, you know, they sold the property. Mm-hmm. All the inside history of the family is gone.
Wow.
So it's quite heavy, you know. I would say this is one of the strongest cases from a will point of view that I've seen to this extreme, Carl, to this extent of crime.
Yeah.
Because the notary went there and probably made a few questions, and she said this, but she was not really capable to make decisions. But the notary went as far as they did.
Well, they allowed the new will to be signed. So.
Correct. And that's the number one problem. Now, whether she was capable or she knew what she was doing in a hospital, in that floor.
So is that, as the lawyer, is that what you have to prove to the judge, that you're saying that she wasn't capable?
Capable.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the key of the case to is that she was not capable, and therefore that will is void. The bottom line here, okay, there is a crime, fraud, false, okay, eventually they will declare that will void. Fine. What happens with everything now?
Recriminations after that, then you have to try and reclaim the money or
where
from the
is
house
it,
that was
Carl?
sold, etc.
Where is all that money? And that's a problem. That's why it's important to go quick and straight away. Because if you find out this, you need to go straight away, put a charge against the property, block, and do whatever hassle you need to do is at that time. Afterwards, probably it's too late. I mean, the client is doing this for principles, and he's saying, enough, I want to do this, so it will not happen again, because he will do it again to somebody else. Because unfortunately, there is people like that.
Yeah, they do. They do use vulnerable people for their own gain, and it does happen in isolated cases as well. It's not like a serial person who does this. They happen, of course, but we have heard on a regular basis situations where the will that people or the family thought their relative had turns out not to be the one when it comes to the light of day, and it comes up regularly in the expat newspapers here, I'm afraid, and it does happen quite often, obviously, with expats because of the fact that they're are isolated from their family, who are probably abroad or maybe abroad and generally elderly in a foreign country, and sadly that does happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, you are very vulnerable. That will be the answer to the whole thing, and then people do what they like with you. That's the bottom line.
How are the judges here on these sort of cases? Are they generally sympathetic, or are they quite hard on the lawyers to prove the point that they need to be able to rescind that will?
Here, Carl, the key of the case is whether she was capable to make that decision or not. But there are evidence that you will see that will. Mm-hmm. That will, she would have never signed that if she knew what she was signing. Now, we have witnesses as well that they will stand up in court and say, no, she wouldn't leave anything to somebody else unless it was his son. Mm-hmm. And the good thing from our client, he's saying, Ignacio, I do this. Obviously, if I got zero chance, I probably will not do it because it's wasting money. But if there is at least something I could do, I will definitely go for it. And I said to him, listen, the only way forward now, the only way out we have is the criminal action.
Right.
And a different matter is what kind of evidence we're going to get in the trial eventually, and whether the judge is going to understand. But the judge will be sympathetic. I mean, if it was something more normal, Carl. I mean, you have a son. You made a previous will that you leave everything to your son. It's your only son. You had a good relationship. And you changed the will the very last minute in the hospital, driven by, it is. Now, a different thing is the material we need to use to convince a judge that the whole thing, it was a fraud.
So back to those medical documents that we were talking about.
Correct. And obviously the evidence here is the will.
Yeah.
I mean, why would she sign a will like that? Why would she, if the relationship was good?
So it's totally out of character, and there doesn't seem to be any reason why she might change it.
Carl, I will be asking here, obviously, is for a prison sentence, obviously, and then from a civil point of view, to make void that will. So the existing one, the previous one, will be the binding.
Right.
However, you will say, Ignacio, but what's the practical side of the whole thing? How much money is going to be left out? Mm-hmm. Is the beneficiary going to be in Spain at the time? Is the money going to be in Spain? And that's a challenge that neither you and me and nobody knows at the time.
What's the sort of, I'm not saying that anybody would want to go out and do anything like this, but what sort of jail sentence are you going to be asking for?
Well, I will ask for maximum here for fraud is 248 of the criminal code, vulnerable people. I mean, as much as I could ask, that's what I normally do. When I go through criminal, as I go for the maximum if possible, and then if it's less, well, it depends on the evidence. In this specific situation here, I will be asking at least for 6 to 7. But,
yes,
but we're talking about property. We're talking about false. Is false public false. We call it these public documents false. Mm-hmm. I think there is a specific crime for that.
Okay,
is falsedad en documento público, right? So there is a lot of things. The public notary will have to explain as well who instruct them to the notary to go to hospital, because she wouldn't. She was not capable to call anyone. So who did organize? And obviously, the person who went there will have to explain why they went there. Obviously, they're going to say it was her wish. But there are neighbors as well that will say the opposite. So this is impossible.
How long does a case like this normally take? Because it takes a long time for them to come to trial in the first place in Spain still. So
I wouldn't think it's going to go faster than 2 years.
Okay.
I wouldn't on the first trial.
All right.
And then it will go into high court and etc. And now the only problem and reflection here, Cole, if something happens like this, you need to act quickly.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it too late, the strength that you might have really disappears because of not being effective. And so it's really, I don't know. So how long is it going to take? Is it going to be in our favor? How much are you going to get? Is really... So the good thing of some clients is they do it because it's a principal thing, even though it's going to cost them money.
If they can afford to.
If they could afford to, obviously. Because if you... But we are always very straightforward and clear. This is the real scenario, even with a blackboard, which is explained, timing, time, hourly rates, possible scenario, and then it's your trial. And it's a personal decision. Probably you and me will go, somebody will not go, or the other way around.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you've talked about this on the radio before, but there was a situation where somebody passed away on their own at home, and there were a number of things missing after the police had been, and then as executors, you actually arrived at the property, and things that had been there had gone. Things like the car, even. And these cases still happen on a regular basis.
You wouldn't believe it, because actually we were told by a client of ours that she passed away. So then I did organise with my team to go to the property, well, with Isabel and myself. And then we went to the property. Then I called the local police to come along. So, there's nothing to hide. Come along, and then let's find out the truth on the whole story. And obviously when we went there, he explained to us how she found it and what happened, etc. It was the dog, the one who just started barking and saying to the neighbours. But I will say, well, how do I start now digging? Where is the phone? The phone, I still haven't found it.
So you're looking for to find out who the beneficiaries might be in order to deal with last will and testament, etc.
That's what I'm saying now to all my clients, and we're starting the campaign to try to prevent problems, because this could happen. As executor, what I need is instructions. I don't even need to know the figures. Because the figures, you don't know how much you're going to have in the 20 years. But if something happens, I want you to contact this bank, or these is my children or beneficiaries. This is simple, but if you don't have it, where are your assets? Who knows where they are? And who are the beneficiaries? Well, in this case in particular, we were the executors. We didn't have a lot of information, but that's why I went to the property and said, well, let's start digging, because I know the name of the beneficiaries, the nieces, but I don't have a clue where they live.
So no address or anything? No contact
that
numbers.
happened probably end of July, and we were already in October, the beginning of October, and we didn't know. So I started digging, and I made a denuncia as executor to the Guardia. Where was the car? Because the car, apparently, funny enough, we arrived 9:30 in the property. Well, the neighbors said the car was there before we arrived, but the car disappeared. I don't know whether they knew we were going, and they said, well, I'm going to take the car away. So that was the first thing missing. Second was the phone. I speak to the Guardia said the phone was there, charging.
So when the police were there, the
phone was there. They never took it. So it disappeared. I mean, we kind of guess who probably could have been the same person probably who got the car. And pocket money, the purse, we don't find it. Where is it? Where is the residencia? Where is the passport? The rest is everything was there. Probably there was not a lot of cash, probably just the typical 100 euros or whatever.
But that had been there when the police originally attended.
Yes, so we made a denuncia for the car, for the vehicle, and we made a denuncia for the phone. Okay, and now we are in process of selling the property, doing the probate, etc. And you wouldn't believe this. Sometimes, you're lucky or somebody helps you from up there, because we start digging full of papers, full of everything. Very well organized teacher, she was, and then you need to say, well, let's get the computer. Probably the computer is going to allow us to go. Funny enough, it was charged, so you could open access. They didn't ask for a code, which was great.
Okay.
So I could go straight into the emails and try to find the same last name somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because she had a very good, communication in general with the nieces. And funny enough, we found out the email from the mother of the nieces, so her sister-in-law. So we managed to email and we started. So they flew over from the UK. The two beneficiaries came. We met them. It's very nice people. And at least,
So you're able to make that connection there.
well, that was great. That is very rewarding, because it's not only the executor does all the paperwork. It's not just assistant helps, So it really, thank God we could help,
I mean, quite often people might make their will sort of 20 years ago and not think anymore
Correct.
about it. Things might change,
Yeah.
So you could be in a situation where what was the case and the people may not even be around anymore that were perhaps the beneficiaries when somebody made a will, say 20 years ago
Yeah.
or so, which I guess is why you're asking people to review what
your
they
will.
have at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and the more things you find out, Carl, the more experience you have with possible bad scenarios, I mean, it's nothing wrong. You did a will 20 years ago, but probably it's not accurate. Probably you don't have an executor. Probably now you have a different needs, a different scenarios, and you want to leave instructions and you want to do it, or you need advice from tax planning point of view. So there is a variety of things you could improve. Some clients just said recently, some of our clients, they said, Ignacio, I had it this way, but I said, this is too complex. If you want to avoid problems, don't make it too complex.
Specifically with taxes and rules which change over the years. So it is a good idea for somebody who made a will for a certain time ago then to perhaps have that reviewed right now. And so there are probably easier and more straightforward tax laws now than there perhaps would have been 10, 20 years ago.
Definitely. There is two things people need to be aware. One is Group 1, you always have a better condition, a better allowance. Okay, so nowadays in this community, we have 100,000 euros allowance per beneficiary, and then you have 99% off. Right. Then, if you're living with somebody but you're not married, you're not partners, then probably it's a good question to say, is it worth registering partnership? Because they might say, Ignacio, we've been 30 years together. And it is a pity to say, I'm going to leave everything to you, but the state is going to take from 7 to 37%.
Mm-hmm.
So why not legalizing these things, or doing the way you want to minimize the tax? That's another important thing. And then, depending on the amount of money, you could distribute it a better, efficient way.
Right.
Or just give it to charity.
Certain amounts I see.
Give it to charity that is tax-free for them.
Okay.
So there is a lot of value on, and then Pedro and myself, we're being in the UK recently trying to have collaborations with UK lawyers as well, because cross-borders situations. So we need public notaries in the UK, lawyers in the UK, lawyers here. And it was very, very good for this purpose.
Right.
I think I heard in the UK they're increasing the taxes probably for inheritance tax. Is that correct?
Definitely in some areas.
In some areas. So these things look. That's what I'm saying. The laws change, and sometimes I say now the law says this, but don't take it for granted. The government changed. Tomorrow might be a different, efficient way.
So what might it cost somebody to come to you and say, look, I've got my will, but it was done 10, 20 years ago. Could you just check it over and make sure everything's all right?
We're doing this campaign for Bay Radio listeners as well. We're offering 30 minutes, just appointment, review your will, and we will honestly tell you whether it's worth doing something or probably leave it the way it is.
In most cases, they're generally okay?
It really depends on your wishes.
Yeah.
Because probably if you just want to check whether the applicable law is correct, whether the legalities, depending on the year, I could tell you what whether
I
it's
see.
correct. I mean, if we're talking about 2005, if we're talking about 1990s, it depends on how old is your will. However, if you really want to change the beneficiaries, there is not a codicil in Spain, so you cannot add something. You need to change your will.
A new will.
A new will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. But not only that, Carl, what it is really important is to leave everything well organized.
Yeah.
So you give instructions
No
to people.
doubts.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Yeah. And you leave instructions to your loved ones, and you leave everything well. Going back to the story of the teacher, I tried to find out whether she had a funeral plan, and she did. So we rang, and they say, "Well, no, she's not in her books." And things. I say, "I'm sorry, I've got it here. Mm-hmm. Thank God I had it, because otherwise." So clients, I'm always asking, "Do you have the funeral plan?" Yes. Do you have a copy of it? Okay, just give it to me.
Yeah.
I'll scan it. I'll put it here. You never know. At least if they tell me in the future, no, because this poor lady was in the tanatorio. She was probably 3 months.
Wow, that's expensive.
So thank God we found that, and she was very well organized. And then we just said to the company, "I'm sorry, but here is a certificate." And they say, "Okay, yes, I know. It's so you need to fight."
I guess they always say no first off, right?
You never know, because it was paid, wasn't it?